today's plan is to get the rest of the engine back together, all the components that we were missing from the last video, get them back on the engine and hopefully do a test fire.
That's awesome, man. What are we gonna do first?
Oh, yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and start finishing off the engine. See, we got some of the components on already, but we're gonna put just mocked up the exhaust there. So we got the intake, the headers, the Flex exhaust gasket. It's all loosely put on for now, so we're gonna go ahead and torque all that down. What we wanna do is get oil in the engine. We've got a bunch of this engine braking oil, this high zinc content, so we can seat those rings real good in the engine. So we're gonna get that in, and then we've got this cool little gizmo right here that Kevin made up. It's kind of like a distributor, right, Kev?
Yep.
This kind of
just an old distributor that was junked.
Right.
We took the gear off and turned it into an oil primer.
Right, so this is pretty cool. So we'll just stick this right in the distributor, and then what do you say? Put like a drill?
Put a drill on there.
Drill on there, and spin the engine over, and hopefully we'll see oil come up through the oil galleys.
Yep.
So that would be really cool. And then we did run into an issue with the carb. So the plan was to get this fired up today. So, this was the original carb from the original 1982 engine. And even though this is a 1977, it's still gonna work okay, but this is a problem we ran into. So the bottom of this carb here, so this is the primary throttle body. And see, it's not even opening full. It should be, what do you reckon that is, like maybe halfway, just shy?
80%,
80%,
something like that.
And this one's stuck. So it's not opening at all. So that was probably part of the reason we didn't have any power in this motor. So the plan is we wanna go ahead and call up Cruiser Outfitters or someone today and get a rebuild kit for this. And Kevin's got some parts that we can kind of take his old carb and this old carb and kind of bring them together and make one good one. So we'll do a video on that coming up here real soon, hopefully. But for now, let's go ahead and get the motor and everything back together and get everything torqued down and move right along. The part shelf is starting to look less and less full. On top of getting these in today, I also want to get the intake manifold on. That's a Flex gasket for the headers that I've got sitting over here. And the project, doing a project like this, I don't know about you guys, but when I do it, I ended up, well, if I'm in here, I may as well do this. And while I'm doing that, I may as well do that. And, you know, it's just a rabbit hole, you know? So I've got the distributor that I'm going to clean up. The power steering pump I pulled off. Did I need to rebuild it? No, I didn't. But did I do it anyway? Yes. For some reason, I decided that was necessary. Went ahead and sandblasted the reservoir here and got that painted up. I mean, by the end of it, the thing's gonna look mint. I bent the power steering pulley, getting the damn thing off. That was a fail. But I had one of the Land Cruiser guys sent me another one. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing sandblasted and painted and get it reattached to that power steering pump over there. So that was really cool of him. And then if I got time, another thing I want to do is tackle this wizardry right here. I am not a carburetor guy, but I'm keen to learn. So I'm going to gently tear into this and stuff it in there and hopefully get this thing cleaned up and get out on the truck. So anyway, without further ado, lots to get on with, so let's crack on. Okay, so what we've done here is I've just mocked up the intake here and this set of headers. Nothing's been bolted down tight yet. We are using, as recommended, a Flex gasket right here. And they have their own torque specs, right, Kev?
Yeah, they do. It's right here on the package. They say use 20 to 25 foot-pounds, and then follow the instructions. Don't use any sealers. Once you torque it down, you don't have to retorque it. The gasket actually will expand it'll compress it, and then it'll expand back, and you don't ever have to. I had a lot of issues with mine, with my 2F when I was running it, of getting air leaks and it backfiring and running lean. So anyway, we're gonna put that on there. It's a great solution, but do follow Rimflex recommended torque specs rather than following the Toyota specs on the Rimflex gasket.
Cool. Yeah, because I know the Toyota ones, they have issues with leaking, don't they?
They do. A lot of people run 2 of them. They run a lot of sealer on them, and they can work well. But this is I think, a better solution.
Okay, cool. Hey, you got that package real quick? Let's take a look here. For those of you who want one or interested, there's the information right there. All right. Anyway, we're gonna snug this down, get it all tight, and move on to the next one.
Primed up here. We got all 8 quarts in the engine, oil filters on. We're gonna use this guy. You can use a screwdriver. I just had this old distributor laying around, and rather than throw it away, I figured I'd just pull the gear off of it and make it an oil prime tool. So if you notice, it looks like a large screwdriver on the end. There's a slot in the oil pump down there. We're gonna drop the distributor down into.
Once that slides on in there.
Slide that in there, and then
is there like a?
There we go. And that should be in there. Then we'll just get the drill, and we'll chuck it onto the end of the shaft there, and then we'll spin it.
All right, and we'll take off this valve cover, right? And then we should see all the oil coming up through all the valves.
Yep.
So let's try that.
Hey guys, we're gonna put the distributor in now. Like I said before, we get the engine up on top dead center. We are going to drop the distributor in there. It should be oriented about like this, with the rotor pointed at the number 3 spark plug. Once everything's seated down in there, so the gears are beveled, as you can see. So we'll have to get it set where when it drops in and the gears turn, that it winds up pointing at the number 3.
And you brought a good point up a minute ago, didn't you? This is we're running points in this.
Yeah. So Dan's truck, obviously the Cruiser, when it came from the factory, it did have the points in there, but it was basically it was just a breaker. It was a signal to the electronic ignition of the original setup from Toyota. Somewhere along the way, somebody removed the electronic ignition and just turned it into a straight points ignition. So what we may end up doing is either putting Pertronics in there, or maybe a DUI or some other type of electronic distributor, just to get a better reliable running truck. Although it didn't run bad beforehand.
No,
so
it ran pretty
we'll
good, which was surprising considering what state it was in. Would you get that clamp?
I did. The clamp is on there.
All right, so while Kevin seats that in over here, just for those of you wondering, if you need a clamp for the distributor, that is the part number. All right, so this is another issue we found with the trucks. This is the original starter motor. We pulled it apart just to clean it up real good, and man, just opened up a can of worms as usual. So if you can see, let's see if I can pull the light in there. Can you see at the very back of that starter motor, you see the little contactors. That one on the very far left is snapped off. It's just missing. You see that?
Yep.
And then in here, this is all falling apart. There was bits of cardboard shoved in here. I mean, this thing is completely on its last legs. All the inside of the barrel here, all these magnets and whatnot, chewed up on the very end, the contactors.
Yep.
And it's rusty as all hell. So we went ahead and decided to do an upgrade. Another new starter motor. This is a gear reduction starter motor that's going to go on the truck. Will hopefully make it spin up a lot faster. The thing is tiny. Look at the size of that thing in comparison. Look at the size difference. So
It's a lot lighter too,
yeah,
but it spins the motor over a ton quicker. It's a great upgrade to take like an FJ60 starter and put on your 40 series. They fit right up.
right.
Just a straight bolt-on solution.
And probably a lot more accessible too if you do end up frying one on the on the trail or out on the road. So easier than finding one of these big old behemoths.
Right.
So yeah, let's get that slapped on. I would like some expensive tools.
You hear that, guys? We would like some expensive tools. You can send them to.
Yeah, that's right. Addressed to Music City Cruisers. We have needs. All right, that's on. Quick. All right, guys, it's been about a week or so since that last clip was filmed. I started getting into this carburetor here, and as you can see from this video, it was just an absolute mess. I mean, just dirt and everything inside the carburetor. I finally managed to get the secondary open, but it took me using a pair of pliers to do that. So I went ahead and ordered this off of Amazon. Now this is just a cheap carburetor. I put the link in the description below. It's just I think a $79 or $78 cheap Chinese carb. I need to get the truck running for a deadline. So I'm gonna throw this thing on, run to the parts store, grab some carb cleaner, clean it out real good, make sure there's no metal shavings or anything in there, and get it on the truck. But before we can do all that, I have to run out to the store, gotta get some, like I said, not just some carb cleaner, but I gotta get some fresh fuel. The fuel sitting in this truck is about a year old, so I need to get some fresh fuel for that before we can run that through the engine. A few things I did do off camera, just boring stuff, just to get it on there. I got the battery tray on there, just pulled out, started tightening a few bits and pieces down, getting it ready for the carb to arrive. So looking at my list here, there are a few things we need to do. I need to get the drive shaft put on so that we can get the engine in gear because, the transmission in gear, because the crankshaft bolt needs tightening down, and I can't do that right now because it's in neutral. So that's got to be done. Let's see, the carb, obviously the oil pressure gauge, and hook up the oil pressure gauge, make sure we have good oil pressure when we do the test fire. I need to adjust the valves. So I've got a few things to do. So I'm gonna run out, go get some fuel for this, just put in a gas can, so we're gonna run some fresh fuel for the engine, get some carburetor cleaner so we can clean this carb out real good, and then we'll get back on it, get those things buttoned up, and hopefully we'll get this test fire done, I'm hoping today. I pull up the gas station here. This is the stuff we want right there. Non-ethanol, you know? It's not cheap, but it's the good stuff. Just got back to the house. I picked up some carbon choke cleaners. We'll use this to clean out this carburetor really well. Make sure there's no shavings in there, like I mentioned before. Also picked up some starter fluid, just in case, you know, it's having a tough time. Maybe this give the engine a helping hand to kick over for the first time. I also grabbed some some new vacuum line to run from the distributor to the carburetor. And of course we got our 5 gallons of fresh fuel down there. So without further ado, let's crack on. taken the coil and just temporarily put it here, because normally it would sit on the fender, and of course I don't have the fender on, so just to get out of the way, the coil, and then hooked up this up to the middle of the distributor over there. Let's see, what else? The battery's ready to go on. Oh yeah, I did take, so in the truck I do have a aftermarket oil pressure gauge. I've taken that and just gone and put that in here so that when we start the truck, we can have an actual readout. In fact, let me show you that. There's the oil pressure right there, and just a voltmeter and just temp sensor. So I'm hoping that once we get this thing going, I should be able to have someone sitting here and see what the oil pressure is, so we can keep an eye on that.
What day is it today?
It's test fire day. You know, actually, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I look back all the videos when we started doing this for this episode, or for this video. It's been over a month. So between getting to this point and the delays with the carburetor and then having to get the drive shaft hooked up. Anyway, whatever. Today's the day. We're gonna get this thing fired up. We've got the drive shaft hooked up. As you know, we cranked down on that crankshaft bolt as best we could. It's not quite where it needs to be, but it should be good enough just for this test fire. Got a vacuum gauge hooked up here so we can see what kind of vacuum we're pulling from the engine. And so we've got the oil pressure gauge inside the truck, so when we do crank it, we can see what kind of oil pressure we're getting. I'm gonna use the little fancy dandy plunger here, start the engine, and see if this thing will fire up.
All right, let's get to it.
All right, man, crank it.
All right, here we go.
All right.
Still in the window right there in the foot. Oh.
Yeah. Did it come out?
Oh, we got fuel. That's a lot of fuel.
All right, so we cranked this thing up, and it seemed like the float valve was stuck, which caused all this fuel to pour out of here. So Kevin tapped on the side of it. I think we got it seated now. Now it's not coming out anymore. We did just test to make sure we got good spark, which we do. So, what are we doing now, Kev?
It's probably flooded, so we're just gonna hold the throttle wide open for now. If that doesn't work in a few seconds, we'll probably pull all the spark plugs out and just try to flush all the fuel out of the cylinders and dry the spark plugs off.
All right.
But it seems like it tried to hit a few times.
Yeah, I thought it sounded like it wanted to cough.
Yeah.
In the life, but
not real strong, but
yeah,
good enough.
All right, let's give it a go. Sounds like a Jamaican bongo band.
Yeah.
All right, so we gave this thing a bit of a break. The starter motor was getting kind of warm, and hopefully the flooding is kind of everything's subsided. So I'm gonna put the charger on the battery. So let's give it another go.
All right, here we go.
Oh, dude. Adjusting the choke or the idle?
No, the idle. Turning the idle up and sidling too low.
Ollie, high five. Yeah.
Congrats.
All right, guys, we're gonna wrap the video up there. Man, what an achievement today, getting the engine fired up. I cannot believe it. It's been over a year. I think I looked at it, it was like 376 days or something since I pulled ahead on the engine and decided to play mechanic. And so what a great feeling to get that done. Still a lot to do before we can do a drive. I need to plumb the cooling system in. So we'll get that on, get the fenders on. The engine, we need to break in the lifters, so we need to run it at a sort of high RPM for about 15 minutes. Get the end that all seated in. I've got a drive shaft going to be made up here soon for the front, so we'll get the front and rear drive shafts in properly, and hopefully we can take it down the road. But guys, I really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks so much for watching. If you did like the video, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next episode.